Hi everybody, you are here for Archiware's Take Control of Storage Costs, where we're going to introduce P5 version 7.1 with Data Mover. Welcome all, this is David Fox in the UK speaking, and here in voice and on camera is Joseph. Hi Joseph.
Hi David, hi people. Thank you for having me.
Joseph's the CEO at Archiware, I should mention that, and you're in Munich. And
yeah.
I imagine
close to Munich.
Close to Munich, and I imagine most of our guests are across the Atlantic, but maybe some in Europe as well. So yeah, you're all very welcome. So let's begin on time. Just gone past the hour, so I'm just going to give you some housekeeping info. Check my highlighters working. Cool. Okay, so this is a 45-minute webinar. We're going to record it and send everybody that registered the recording. We'd like questions at the end, so please use the GoToWebinar control panel that you can see in on my screen here to type anything, any questions, technical or otherwise, about what we're going to show you. So let's begin. In this webinar, we're basically going to cover off what is being newly introduced 2 days ago in version 7.1 of Archiware P5. So we have 4 general enhancements and then a couple of things around the archive module there in orange, the main one being the data mover. So the majority of this webinar is going to be talking about the data mover. And then point 7, which is not on the slide, is futures. What can we expect in the next few releases of Archiware? And we've got some quite interesting stuff to tell you there as well. So in order to avoid distracting, now that you know what we look like, I think we'll turn off our cameras because we are very camera shy, so we don't like to be shown too much on camera. So let's go for the next slide. So yeah, this is the one I wanted. So yeah, we'll go through the general things that have been added to version 7.1, starting with multi-factor authentication, or MFA. This is something you're probably familiar with, having an additional piece of information needed to log in, not just the username and the password. People often don't use very good passwords. So the P5 now supports an email-based second factor. So you can see here, I've received an email with a 6-digit character code, which is required to log into P5. So this obviously requires that P5 server has been configured to deliver email via your 365 or your Google or whatever you're using for your email. And we need to have an email address defined per user, or we can't help you by sending you an email. And then we have this extra step required. So a lot of customers have been asking for this when they're exposing their P5 admin interface, maybe outside the company. So we now have that one included. UNC path support, that stands for Universal Naming Convention. That's how Windows describes paths to hosts plus shared volume plus a folder structure. So the UNC path wasn't previously supported in P5. As you'll know, if you've used it, you had to map a drive letter and then specify the drive letter to access shared storage. So now you can enter a UNC path in a particular syntax that you can see in the screenshot over here. So our server is called Win 2019 Production. You have to use a / and put an @ sign in front of the server. Otherwise, everything is the same in the UNC path. So it's a much easier way of accessing storage versus drive letters. Obviously, when you're specifying such a path, the P5 server needs to be able to access that path. So if this is running on the local machine and it's Windows, then you have to use the netuse command, or there's a GUI, Windows Credentials Manager, that you can store those passwords away. Or if it's a client that's the Windows data source, then you'll need to use one of those tools on that client so that the path can resolve. So yeah, it's a convenience for people running on Windows, and much appreciated that that's been added. Joseph, this is one for you to describe a bit more. Improved, optimized database design. There's quite a lot to this, so tell us more.
Yeah, it was a lot of work, and nobody will see it, or nobody will hopefully see it. So we have many customers already
to talk about it. Yeah.
we have a many customer they have already a few petabytes of data, and this will grow constantly. And this customer, also in the media world, they have maybe a few millions entries of data in their database index, and this will constantly grow also. So in the future, we will maybe see a few million, 100 million entries, and P5 should also be able to work with this number of elements too. So we had to do everything, or we should do everything, to have a stable indexing with a several hundred million of elements. And we first invest to research what costs us performance inside of the index, and we figure out that we have a lot of additional structure for a compatibility import reason from P4 to P5. So we had additional structure inside, which is currently not longer necessary, because we can do everything by program code, and we will remove this additional structure from the database. So we win a lot of security and performance with this changes in design. And this makes us for the future faster and more reliable on the level of database number of elements. So this was a good, very good investment, and it brings stability for all the customers.
Okay, yeah. So it makes things better for the future, but it's very much an under the hood thing, which makes the product better, but doesn't have any bells or whistles that are exposed.
No, absolutely not. The people should any notify this that we did changes there in the
yeah. Okay, final of the four general changes is that we've refined a lot of the table views in the web UI, like this one, which is the volume list, which is a particular screen where large installations may have very large numbers of LTO tapes, for example. What was the number of tapes you mentioned earlier, Joseph?
Yeah, nearly 18,000. So
18,000. Right, yeah. So yeah,
LTO, yeah, LTO.
18,000 LTO tapes. So yeah. It's not a standalone drive then. That's a library, right?
No, it's a large library, and this is also a special candidate for data migration. So they are constantly moving.
Yeah. So for such installations where you've got 18,000 things to display in a table, obviously that would get a bit slow without pagination. So we added pagination down here. So you can choose how many items will be shown. In fact, let me just switch tabs here, because I have a 7.1 installation where I can log in and we can access the exact same screen. So the volume list here, if I look at all volumes, I don't have 17,000, I have 502. So these are paginated into 20s. Could make that 50, or I could make that 10, depending on if you have a small browser window maybe. And we can search. So I could put in, like, I'm interested in a barcode that ends with 07 maybe, or contains 07, finds all the matches immediately. Actually, there are 15 of these, so there's a few more there. I can do searches across any of these fields. And I can also search on expiration date, date filled, date written by using these little date widgets here. So so it becomes much easier to paginate, to search within very large volume lists with the enhanced GUI in version 7.1, instant search, pagination. Okay, so now this is an archive feature before we get onto Data Mover. So we include MHL, that stands for Media Hash List Checksum Manifests on LTF Exchange volumes. LTFS Exchange is the tool within P5 Archive designed for putting data on an LTFS tape and then sending that to somebody else so that they can have the contents of that tape, often used with media files, maybe on set, shooting on cameras, getting that footage onto tape and sending it somewhere else. So a lot of people receiving these kind of tapes will require an MHL checksum manifest, and those are the things which are now written to the LTFS tape. When it's unmounted, we have all of the hashes. There's a few different hash formats. They're MD5s on the right, but we also support SHA and a couple of others. So you can make the hashes and they get dumped into files. There's a CSV file effectively at the top here. Let me put my laser pointer on. And then there's an XML with the actual MHL file is an XML format. So we mentioned in the earlier webinar, the likes of Netflix require the MHL file to be present on the tape so they can recalculate the hashes and verify that every bit of all of the files on the tape are correct before they will use it. So this is a requirement for shipping tapes with media on, and P5, we are now supporting that within the archive, the LTFS exchange part of the archive module. So now we come to the new part, the new module, which is called P5 Data Mover. So this is an entirely new piece for the product. You can see it has its own position in the UI here, has its own configuration. So what is P5 Data Mover? It's a new add-on license for P5 Archive. So that means that in order to make use of Data Mover, you have to already be using P5 Archive to archive files to either disk, tape, or cloud. And P5 Data Mover provides you with a policy-based moving or copying, so replicating or migrating the archived data between LTO tape, cloud storage, and disk. So if you already have data on one of those, you can replicate or migrate to another one, or you could be doing it between two different generations of LTO or two different cloud vendors, for example. So it supports disk, LTO, and cloud. It's policy-based and scheduled. That means that you define a policy of how it should work and a schedule about when it should run, and then it looks after itself, and we'll give you a demo of that. It gives you flexibility and optimized cost. Basically, people have archives which last for many years of use, and in that time period, storage changes. LTO tapes get bigger and faster, cloud storage offerings get broader, maybe come down in price. Or disk storage probably gets more expensive for on-prem. So you may decide as years pass that you're not doing the best thing. So this gives you flexibility to take your archive index, which knows about everything that you archive for the last 15 years, and choose different storage and replicate or move data that you already archived somewhere that's going to be cheaper, maybe faster, ticks the boxes within the business that you need to tick. Also supports any LTO generation, which makes it particularly useful for migrating from older LTO generations to newer ones. So what do we mean by add-on license? We simply mean that you already have a P5 archive workflow in place, and then you can add this functionality to your archive to give you this flexibility of choosing different storage locations going forwards and moving data that you already archived. Some possible use cases that we think are valuable for people. If you have, let's just as an example, have LTO 5 tapes which have a capacity of 1.5 terabytes uncompressed, you could migrate those to LTO 9, which have a capacity of 18 terabytes, and then every 12 of your LTO 5s fit on one LTO 9. So a 24-slot tape library full of tapes becomes 2 LTO 9 tapes. So this provides you with a way to handle that without having to host all of that data on disk as an intermediate thing, where you stream it directly from the LTO 5 tapes to the 9. If you're using tape libraries, we handle all of the tape swapping on both libraries. If you're using standalone drives, we tell you which tapes are needed. Another option where cloud is involved might be that you want to take an existing archive of LTO tapes and migrate that to the public cloud. But there could be a time-based element. So maybe once data has been archived for 300 days, that's the point when you want to move it to public cloud, but you don't want to move it immediately. So you can schedule this to run every week. We'll look for data that's been added to that in that time frame, and we will migrate or make a second copy of that in the cloud storage. We have come across customers that want to get out of cloud. Maybe costs were not what they were expecting. So you could do that. You could pull data back to on-prem LTO. You might have a very old collection of tapes. Archiware supports tape formats going way back to AIT and DLT. So you could migrate data that we've written to those tapes somewhere else, maybe even to disk, pending deciding what to do with the data next. So really all possibilities are there with Data Mover between these three different storage formats. You can really do whatever you want. And it's all configured via what we call a migration plan. So this is the main new part of the UI. There's 4 steps. First of all, we're working with pools. So your source pool is where you currently have data archived. So this could be the LTO5 pool or whatever. And the target pool is where you want to either copy or move the data to. So you would configure a pool for Amazon Glacier cloud storage or for a more modern LTO format. So you need to configure those pools, so the source pool is where you've already got data archived. Next, we can filter based on the archive date. So no filtering results in everything in the source pool being migrated. Otherwise, you can choose an archive age, so basically archive everything that you archived more than 100 days ago or within the past 300 days. You can choose the migration mode, which is simply, do we move the data to the new archive and replace the reference in the archive index with the new one pointing to the new target volumes, or do we make a second copy, which is redundant, provides you with redundancy and means that when it comes to restoring data, you can choose to restore from either of the pools where your data is stored. And finally, you schedule this to run at intervals to pick up any files which have now fallen within the archiving date window, or so that you can have the job running maybe out of hours so it's not interrupting people working on the storage. Importantly, the jobs can be stopped, so you could have it running Monday through Friday, but you can choose some number of hours after which we will terminate the migration and then begin again the next day. So with that, we'll give you a bit of a demo of, not so much a demo because this is not lending itself so much to a live demo because of the times involved, but I'll show you the screenshots involved in performing a migration. So here we begin with an original archived asset that's in a pool called Disk Archive here. So we have a picture of a car and, whoops, skipped ahead by accident, a picture of a car that's been archived on this date to this pool that's in a local disk library. So in order to start migrating the data in this pool, we use this disk archive pool as our source, and we have some target pool. In this case, it's another disk-based pool because it's easiest for testing to use disk for both. And you'll notice that we have 2 buttons here. The first one will look at the date range and the source pool and let you know which volumes are required. And the green button can be used once the migration has started and will let you know how much has been migrated so far. So this is the initial setup, pretty much the same as I showed. Yeah.
Can I interrupt? These 2 things are very important. You know, an example, if you have a few hundred or a few thousand volumes, and after a few days or a few weeks, and you're constantly migrating, you don't know where you are currently in the migration process. You need something about which volumes are still required and which volumes are already done. So this is for smaller environments, maybe not very important, but the bigger the environment is, the more important are these 2 buttons. So
exactly. If we imagine the customer with tens of thousands of tapes, then it becomes quite a large task to be performing a migration. So this is the window which shows you, to begin with, the volumes that are required to do this migration that we just configured. So this is the required this is what we get when we click on the red required volumes button, and it shows us the number of files, total number of total quantity in gigabytes, and then it tells us the chain of volumes required, number 1, 2, and 3. And this provides also an order for these volumes, which is important where we think of volumes as being in a chain, because when we're writing data to these volumes, we are spanning files between one volume and the next in order to optimize and completely use the capacity have an LTO tape, for example. So in order to pick up any files that are, or a file that is shared between volumes 1 and 2 here, we require that one volume follows the other. So we call this the chain of volumes, and the chain needs to be available in this order to P5 in order that it can recover all of the files which are shared across, which have 2 volumes in common. But having said that, it doesn't mean that all these volumes have to be available initially. If you have a large number of volumes, whatever volumes you initially put into the tape library, for example, we will start migrating those ones, but we will migrate them in the order that they show up in the volume chain list here.
Yeah, this is one important item on the developing side. So we decide to let the customer be flexible in which order he provides us with the volume. So, in example, this installation with 10,000 volumes. You know, if he is starting with a bunch of 50 or 60 volumes in between of this first and last volume, then we will migrate just the data which are on these volumes, and we keep this information about which volumes are still required, on which volumes we have maybe the last file not migrated because the follower volume was not provided. Then we have still open this volume. So we are keeping all this information constantly in our database, in what process we are currently in the way that we are, which data we migrate already and which we have to do. So
yeah, because you have the database sitting behind all the data, so you know when a file has been migrated and when a file hasn't been migrated. Yeah. Okay, so then we're running the migration plan that we configured, and it runs as a job or a pair of jobs in the job monitor. So one job at the bottom here is providing the restore, so this is effectively reading from the source pool and then passing the data on to the job at the top, which is writing to the target pool. Now this is potentially quite a complex process we were discussing earlier when you're going maybe from LTO tape to cloud or vice versa, two completely different storage media available at different speeds over different kinds of connections, like IP for cloud buckets, S3 protocol, versus fiber channel SCSI commands going to a tape library. So there's a lot of matching of speeds and data and blocks going on in order to make this possible. But
magic.
We do it, and and you've employed some kind of magic there, have you, Joseph?
Yeah, you only have to think about if you are migrating from LTO to LTFS. An example, you like to keep all data now in the future in an open format, and you like to convert your older tapes, which you have maybe in LTO4 or LTO5, and now you are changing from LTO4 with P5 native format to LTFS in an LTO9 drive. So we all have to do, that means we have to do it like we are restoring everything on disk and then reading everything again and putting on a new media. But everything is done in memory. So we are converting everything and keeping this track on in our process, and this was, it was really a hard job for the developing also to do this inline things and not to afford maybe an example, a big caching system where we are restoring everything and then writing everything again.
Yeah.
We are so smart that everything is done in the big pipe.
So it's all done as a single stream going from LTO to cloud or wherever, and obviously that stream of data will run at this overall will run at the speed of the slowest piece in the link. So
absolutely,
if you have a slow WAN connection going up,
but you can also be very fast. An example, if you have a few tapes as source and a few tapes as target, then we are speeding up the things as the hardware allows us. So it is.
So it'll go as quick as the hardware allows. Yeah. So this screen here is the job monitor again expanded out, so you can see the average speed, all of the usual stats about how many files, how much data, how fast it's going. So you can observe the job when it's running, but you can also cancel one of these jobs either deliberately because you want it to stop, need to do something else with the storage, or because you've scheduled it to stop after some hours so that it's not running in the morning when people are trying to use the storage. If you do that, the job will show as a cancelled job in the usual way in the job monitor, but the jobs are designed so that they can be interrupted, as we've already said. So resuming the job will result in everything continuing. And this is the overview of migrated volumes at this point after cancelling. So we know that we did migrate some of this first volume 10,003, but there are still 2 volumes to go, which are now indicated. This is the window that comes up with the green button. So we still have 63.8 gigabytes to migrate from these 2 volumes, but we no longer need volume number 3. That one is completed. And so we continue now with the migration until it's finished. And when it's complete, we see in the job monitor that that remaining 63 gigabytes is migrated. And we now have all of our data sitting in the target pool. And remember, well, this was configured to move the data rather than making a second copy. So the data is now moved. So now finally the overview of migrated volumes means that shows all 3 volumes have been migrated, so there's nothing more to do. But of course, further archiving into the source index, archive index, would result in there being more data to migrate, so you could run the job again. This is the photograph of our exotic car, which now, if you'll remember, has a different volume that it's written to. So this is because we migrated rather than duplicated. So now if we were recovering this, this file from our archive, it would be coming from the volumes that we migrated to rather than the original. If you do make a second copy of your data using this data mover tool, then you can, when you're restoring, you can choose which pool you want to browse, and that would mean that the recovering data would come from the pool that you selected. So you could either browse your LTO on-prem pool or your cloud pool, for example, and then anything that you restore will come from the respective pool. So data mover pricing is there on the screen in euros, dollars, and UK pounds. These are introductory prices which are available until end of Q1 next year. This represents a 30% discount on the standard list prices. So there's an incentive there to get the data mover added onto your P5 archive installation in the next couple of months to save some money. And yeah, that brings us to, so that wraps up the data mover information that we wanted to give you. So now we've got some interesting info that we can also discuss in the questions. We have additional distributions that we will be supported. The stuff on the left here will be added to version 7.1, so will appear as a 7.1. something release. So yeah, we're supporting containers, Joseph. This is the first time that we officially allow P5 to run in a container, and I think this makes it very easy to deploy the P5 software on commercial operating system distribution where you have very restricted ways of adding extra software to the OS, right?
Yeah, a few of the MUM integrators and DAM integrators, they have closed operating systems, and they don't like to install something on operating system level, but they allow us to be a container. Mm-hmm. And that was the reason. And it's just another distribution for us. And the same with the tuners plugin. It's also just another way of distributing P5. It is work to offer these different plugins and different distributions, but it's always the same P5. There's no different P5. It's just another wrapping of software in another world. Mm-hmm. And for us, it's very good to offer to offer P5 on all different places where P5 could be run or could be a useful software. Yes. And that was the reason that we add this additional distribution here.
Excellent, because we already run on FreeBSD, which is the operating system that TrueNAS is based upon, which is a very solid and secure operating system, comparable with Linux, but is much stricter in terms of how it's allowed to to evolve in terms of security and stability. So the TrueNAS is a distribution of FreeBSD, which is a ready-to-go storage device with ZFS file systems and so on. So we have quite a lot of P5 installations running on TrueNAS at this point. And then over on the right-hand side, we've got kind of the future, looking down the road into version 7.2, because Archiware always have a plan about where the product is going. The 7.1 release is all about flexibility of choices around archive storage. 7.2, we've got something really interesting, which is a new way of interfacing with P5 Archive, insofar as we will provide an S3 server, so like an S3 endpoint, just like you might connect software to an AWS S3 bucket or a Backblaze bucket. You could use the same software tools to connect to a P5 S3 endpoint, and then data received, objects received to this object store will be written by P5 Archive into the index and onto whatever storage you're choosing to use, which I think we most commonly see this being useful for LTO. So it means that any software that can interface with a S3 storage will be able to write to a LTO tape library or drive. So it's
it's just an easier way to integrate with third parties. Currently we offer already the CLI thing and this REST interface, but as this S3 interface to P5 allows us to direct integrate with all companies. They have the capability to store data on S3. So they all have now then the option to have also an archive solution for LTO without doing any additional development. So it offers the integrators a lot of options there to integrate with an LTO able company, and this is a good feature for us. Yes.
Okay. Can't hear you for the narration covering your audio. I'm just wondering. I'm just looking at the people typing some stuff into the questions, and a couple of people have mentioned that maybe having some audio problems, but that maybe was earlier on in the presentation. I don't know what we're doing wrong, if we're doing something wrong. So sorry if somebody can currently hear us okay, maybe they could just add a question to say
what should we repeat?
If they can now hear us, or if you missed something, then we can take that as a question. Okay, so if somebody can hear us okay. Dan says we both sound fine. Thanks, Dan. And Dave says that the audio is okay here. So hopefully there was some big submarine in the Atlantic or something that was messing things up. Everybody's coming back and saying that they can hear. So that's good. Thanks for the live feedback. Apparently your room's a bit boomy though, Joseph. So
should we continue with the list here?
Yeah, we'll continue. So
P5
data mover extensions. Do you want to tell us about that one?
The people know maybe the search functionality inside of P5 Archive Index, where you can search, the user can search data, and we will integrate such an interface for the P5 data mover. So you can describe your data on different ways, also with metadata, and you can search for inside of your own structure. In example, you have a description for your own project. Then you can later on then move data not only based on time and on a LTO volume. Then you can also describe data more detailed, and you can move only data which you like to preserve for the future, and maybe other things which are not so important leave then on the older volumes, and they are dying on end when you are deleting these volumes. But you can continue with more important volumes, and that means that we have to integrate a way that you can identify the data which are important to you. That's
any way that you can query the archive index for data that you wish to migrate, it will be possible. And LTFS cloning, basically the P5 archive, when writing to our native format LTO tape, supports cloning, has done for many years. Many of our customers use this with pairs of LTO drives to achieve a redundancy across 2 tapes. If you're archiving from disk storage to tape and you're planning to delete the archive data from the disk storage, which is kind of the point of archiving, then you don't really want to trust it to a single tape. So those without 2 drives would normally archive twice, so they have 2 copies. Cloning allows this to happen all at the same time by using 2 drives. This will be added for LTFS formatted tapes in version 7.2. This is a lot of work because nobody else does cloning when writing LTFS, so this will be another world first for Archiware. Be great for devices with 2 drives. There are some tabletop dual drive SAS and Thunderbolt devices for use on film sets and so on. So this will be really great for that. That's coming soon. And then the pool-based intelligent data tiering. I understand this to mean that when you're archiving, instead of just specifying a single target pool, like your LTO 8 tape library, for example, you'll be able to specify that and another pool, which is maybe some cloud storage, and then the job will handle writing to both pools in one hit. So the job runs once and the data ends up being tiered across whichever storage pools you specified. Is that about right, Joseph?
Yeah, but the important thing is that you can provide different retention times. So otherwise it was just a different way of cloning. But the important thing is you are starting managing of data at the point you're archiving. So you define how long you like to keep the data on the LTO and how long you like to keep data on cloud, or when you like to keep data on the cloud, and at the beginning where you, an example, you just start with LTO. So you are defining the rules where you like to store the data for what time, and that's a little bit different than the data mover is. Data mover is just working on archive data, and here you have the option to manage your data with tiering information direct at the beginning.
Yes. Okay. Great. Okay. So we've got 10 minutes left and we have about 15 questions in our list. So thanks everybody for engaging with us with the questions. In fact, I should go through my next slide, which is our URL to go grab Archiware P5 for one of the platforms that we support. And also a 30-day trial evaluation is available. And so now to our questions. So some of them are still mentioning the audio issues that we seem to have. Does P5 work well with Microsoft Azure Cloud Storage? That's a question from Steve. Yes, we do. We support Azure Cloud Storage. We support 3 different tiers of Azure. I should be specific. It's the blob storage that we support. In fact, let me just show you something in the web interface. So if we're adding some cloud storage over here, then we are allowing you to select Microsoft Azure. We take your credentials and then we support hot, cool, and archive, where archive is a storage that's kind of similar in price and performance to AWS Glacier Deep Archive, which is probably using LTO tape at the other end to store your data. There's some hours to wait when restoring. But yeah, so the answer is yes, Azure blob storage is what we support. Microsoft have some other cloud storages which are more consumer focused that we don't support. Steve also asks, is there an API interface available for P5 to automate things without requiring human interaction? So yes, we have 2 different API interfaces. One is an older command line interface where you can install a binary on your host that is going to be the source of the API calls, and then that will use our standard CLI interface, which is there's a full documentation for that. And then a couple of years back, we introduced a web services REST-based API, and we have full docs for that as well. So send us an email, Steve, and I'll give you the resources that you need to look that up properly. We have a number of integrations which you already use these integrations, often media asset management and digital asset management products that work with us.
David, did you mention our email address?
Yeah, I'll put the slide
Okay.
back up with our emails so people can make a
Okay.
note. But we'll email all of this info, so
Yeah.
you don't
Okay.
need to wear your pencils out.
Yeah.
Jason says nice UI changes, thanks. So I guess Jason maybe is a customer with hundreds of thousands of tapes and appreciates the new list. Dave in the UK also says looking good on the new volume screen, so he's obviously somebody else that will benefit there. Steve, okay, Steve thinks that the audio problem may have been at his end, but I don't think he was the only one mentioning it, or maybe he was. Mike says, can Data Mover be used to migrate to a new LTO version? So Mike asked that a while back, so I think you'll probably appreciate that yes, you can. You can go from any tape gen to any new tape generation, probably LTO 8 or 9 with this Data Mover tool. So if you need that to happen, then this is what you need, Mike. And Richard asks, what about existing licenses like P5 Professional, which is a bundle? Will Data Mover be free or extra? I think can you remember, Joseph, which bundles the Data Mover is included in?
No, there is just a new bundle which the Data Mover has inside. Or a previous bundle does not include it.
Yeah, right. So there's a new bundle which is called P5 Enterprise XL Suite. So this is a new bundle which includes Data Mover, Backup, Synchronize, Archive, and also includes unlimited slots and storage and 6 LTO drives. So we're including in that bundle. Otherwise, nobody gets P5 Professional nobody gets the Data Mover as part of their support contract. You would need to purchase it as an additional.
It's always additional,
yeah. So that's Richard's question. Kevin is asking, can I set a migration plan to move files on disk to a separate location after they've been backed up to LTO? Then truncate those disk files and create stub files to represent them. There's a few different things going on in that question, and I'm not sure I fully understand it.
Repeat it. Repeat it.
I'll repeat. Can I set a migration plan to move files on disk to a separate location after they've been backed up to LTO, then truncate those disk files and create stub files to represent them? So I
think a little bit I understand. He thinks that we are storing the data in an open format, so we are just storing files somewhere, but we are keeping container. If we are storing our pool format on disks, then we are storing all the information in container files. So they are not the files are not direct accessible. Just that we are storing them in containers. So we are not able to keep on the places. We are not able to keep on these places stub files. We need them for restoring data.
Yeah. I mean, certainly we can create the stub files at the point that we're archiving. So whenever we're archiving some set of files and folders, we can replace all of those files with stub files. So I think there is probably a way to do this, but we need to take it outside of the webinar to discuss it in more detail.
It's part of the archiving process. It's not part of the migration process.
Yeah, but if that's your requirement, Kevin, then get in touch with one of us, and we will we'll give more information than we can provide right now. Question from Richard. There's loads of questions. If Data Mover is holding all I/O in memory, does this increase the system requirements for RAM? That's a good question for you, Joseph.
Yeah, it's the thing is that we need this more or less the same than we would drive at parallel to two tape drives. For example, if you're migrating data from one LTO to another LTO, it's more or less the same than we are streaming data from a regular disk to both tape drives. So it's not more, it is more, we need more power, but this power depends on the number of hardware you supplied us. So if you give us hardware, just one tape to another tape, then we will drive both tapes and we will require the power which is required to drive two LTOs. And it doesn't matter if this is a migration process or if this is an archive or backup process to two tape drives.
Yeah, whatever you're writing has to first go into RAM in order that you have somewhere to read it back out of.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. And the RAM, the size of the buffer in RAM will scale dependent upon the number of separate operation streams that are, drives that are being written and so on.
Yeah. If somebody asked me for a recommendation, I would add for each tape drive, I would add 4 to 8 gigabytes of RAM. It makes definitely sense. Yeah.
Cool. Jason is asking, where do users access the overview of migrated volumes? Okay, I can show you that. So if we go through my slides back to this one, then you can see the overview of migrated volumes is the green button in that screenshot. So that's
make your pointer, David.
Yes, I have to go full screen though for pointing. So
okay.
L for laser. Sorry, I'm pointing the wrong place. Here, migrated volumes. There you go. That was worthwhile. That didn't confuse everybody. Deleting that question because we've answered it. Trevor asks, we have an index with multiple generations of LTO, which is absolutely perfectly possible. Is it possible to choose just a portion of the index to migrate? Yes. You'll have, if all of these different parts of the index are in the same pool, then you would have to select based on date. So that's also in this screenshot. So you can basically choose to archive. Let me just make this bigger and put the pointer back on. So with the current first version of Data Mover, the only way that you can select data is by data has to be in the pool, the source pool, and it has to have been migrated within the date range that you're specifying. So either data that was archived more than 10 days ago or data that was archived within the last 10 days, for example, if you were going to put the numbers 10 in those boxes. So you can specify this range of when the data was archived using that mechanism, and in a future version of the Data Mover, there will be more options available, for example, by querying on file name, folder paths, project folders, and so on. But at the moment, you can just select based on date. Joseph.
Dave, who asked this question?
This is Trevor.
Trevor. So Trevor, I have also another idea where you can specify and select dedicated volumes. So maybe you write me an email and we are discussing this by email, because it's maybe not interesting for all of the other people that are joining currently. But there are ways to deselect volumes out of this list for migration. And if you know what kind of volumes you like to migrate, we find a way to do this without waiting until 7.2. So just write me an email. Yeah.
Excellent. Question from Matthew. Is the add-on a one-time cost or is it an annual subscription license for Data Mover? So it's a one-off cost. It's basically being sold in the exact same way as all of the other Archiware modules, which means that you buy the software outright, you own it. It includes 1 year of tech support and software updates. And then after the first year is finished, you can pay a smaller amount to extend that for a further year. So there's no subscriptions. It's something that you buy and that you own. So thanks for that question, Matthew. Anson asks, not P5 related, but will Archiware Pure development continue in the future, or is the demand for Pure not as high as expected? I'll let you answer that one.
Yeah, we are not really forcing the development with new functionality. We are taking care about things which are happening under VMware. So we are adapting the software to changes which are made from VMware, but we are not putting a lot of effort inside. And yeah, this has thousands of millions of reasons, but I'm not able to discuss it here on this community, but to answer your question, yes, we are taking care about, we are maintaining Pure, but we are not forcing the developing.
Okay. Dan is asking us, will the P5 container or TrueNAS plugin support a fiber channel HBA for connecting to tape drives? So will you be able to use fiber channel from a containerized P5 on TrueNAS via a host bus adapter to go out to a tape? Joseph?
If we are running as a jail, so this is the name, how this is similar to container.
Yeah.
It's the name of it is jail in the BSD world.
Mm-hmm.
And if we are running inside of this closed structure,
Like
then the user or the system administrator is able to provide us with all different storage which are connected to the host operating system, also to the container. And everything what she like to pass through to our application, this is possible. This is also the way that we get access to the tape drive. Normally, a container or a jail doesn't have the options to access tape drives or hardware directly. Everything what the administrator likes to be accessible from the jail or from the container has to be provided by the command line in the way that the container or the jail is started. Mm-hmm. But all the things which are should be controlled by P5 can be passed through.
Okay.
And this is for the source and also for the target side. So everything what we should be able to read from the source side, we can read them if we are allowed to, and everything where we should write to, if it's also a question of administration, then we are writing to it. So
okay,
yes,
that's clear.
Yeah.
Thanks. So it's yes. Dave asks, TrueNAS plugin also includes TrueNAS scale? Question mark. I don't know what TrueNAS scale is. Do you know, Joseph?
Yeah, some vary in. I cannot remember. It's too far away.
Yeah.
No, it's. Please send me an email, so then I will clarify it. Yeah.
Okay. Send Joseph an email, Dave.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Oh, and he's sorry. Elgin says, would you suggest a data move on site versus paying a company to migrate our data from LTO 7 to LTO 9 or LTO 10? Would we suggest a data move on site or paying a company to migrate our data? I mean, if you're going to pay a company to migrate Archiware's archive data from LTO 7 to LTO 9, then you have to use Archiware license and Archiware software to do that. So I would probably say that's something that you should be using your own on-premise Archiware installation to do with the hardware that you own. Otherwise, you're just paying somebody by the hour to use P5 on your behalf. As a follow-up question, another company meaning off-site. Well, I think I would recommend doing it all on-site. The migration task is not that hard to do. So I would, if you're asking, I would suggest doing that on-prem rather than.
And it's very, it's very reliable because it's job-based and it's repeatable, and the biggest effort you have to do is connect all the hardware to your server. And if people are not able to do this, then they have a real problem, because then they only can do it outside. Yeah. But if they are able to connect the hardware to the server and they have an administration for it, then the best way is to do it with our migration tool, because it was developed for doing this.
Yeah. Sorry, we're going over rather here, but we got a lot of questions, and we'll keep answering them whilst you're asking them. So Ben is asking, how do migrations with Data Mover work when there's no plugin to a MAM, such as CatDV, in play? Are there complications when there's a MAM and middleware in play? Okay, it's a good question. So if you have files in the archive index that were put there by CatDV via the API, then can you migrate everything and the MAM still works? I think the answer to that question is simply yes, isn't it, Joseph? Because the entry in the archive index doesn't change.
No, the entry, it's the same entry for in the index, it's just getting more addresses to access it.
Yeah.
But everything, the preview, the meta information, everything stays the same. From the outside world, from the media management system side, no changes.
Yeah. So if CatDV asks Archiware to recover a file or 100 files, then it passes the references to those files to us.
Yeah.
They still work, and we recover the files from the new pool where the data now resides rather than the old pool. If, for example, you'd done a migration to a newer LTO generation. So no, it's designed so that the complications from the MAM side will not be there. Otherwise, everything would break. So thanks for a good question there, Ben. Jason, not many more questions, guys, about 6. So for those that are wondering how long they get, how much more information they can take. Jason asks, do future roadmap plans include a better user experience for maintenance items such as creating post-job reports or running post-job processes without having to use a CLI, perhaps a dedicated maintenance screen? Okay, so that's a feature request from Jason. Joseph, is that something that you've heard before that might be?
Yeah, I would love to do something like this, but we from the developing side do not have enough experiences. So if there is, if I could get some feedback as an email, what the people like to see, I'm open for everything to include in the GUI because it's perfectly for the website. And if there are information which we can prepare for the administration side, then I would love to do it. So
okay. So there's an invitation, Jason, jd@archiware.com.
Yeah.
And that also goes out to everybody else on the call. There's something you'd like to see in the product, then don't think that that there's never going to get
everything what is inside comes from the user. So
so if somebody has a good idea, then it could well go into a future release for sure. Tim asks, Tim's just saying that he loves the S3 endpoint announcement. So great, that's what we want to hear.
Yeah, perfect.
Peter says that's kind of what the old archive app used to do. So I don't know what that's reference to, maybe to the stub files. The old archive app that's been replaced by P5 Companion. So it's a good point, Peter. Derek says, actually, if you have stub creation switched on to an archiving to a disk-based container and use metadata, use data mover to copy that, then that would do it. So this is the question earlier about creating stub files. So Derek, that's Derek from PVT, the US distributor, has some ideas around how that might work. So whoever it was that asked that question also.
I misunderstood it because I thought it was he likes to create stubs out from the target, but he likes to create stubs on the source. So that makes sense.
Steve is impressed by the pointer, so I think that's probably the laser pointer, which just to give you some more laser pointer. This is Google Slides. If I press the L key, there you go. So, thanks for noticing.
Keep people happy,
Thanks for noticing, Steve. Google Slides is free, so you can go have your own pointer. Peter is just clarifying that the TrueNAS scale is based on Debian. TrueNAS core is based on FreeBSD. We run on Debian, so maybe the answer is yes, but maybe not. So maybe somebody else knows. Dave comes back about the TrueNAS again, says, good to hear about TrueNAS jail and fiber channel LTO. TrueNAS scale looks very interesting for enterprise as it's Linux based and provides a URL. Thanks, Dave. There's a URL again from Dave, but I don't know how to share that with everybody really. truenas.com/truenas-scale. Jason's offering to help with something. Can we put the email address on the slide again? Yeah, let's do that right now. jd@archiware.com or df, Josef Doods or David Fox. So there's the emails again. We're nearly there, guys. Thanks for hanging on, everybody. Steve is, yeah, really, really keen on that pointer. And Jason thanks us for a great webinar. And that's the end of the question list. So that's the longest question list I've ever had the delight to go through. So I appreciate that. This makes me think we should do like a web kind of ask me anything Archiware session, Joseph, that we just have
Yeah,
just a
absolutely.
massive like 4-hour Q&A session where we get everybody,
Yeah.
every P5 user in the world. Yeah, people are already saying yes.
Yeah.
Okay then. So that's it. We're going to do it.
Yeah, we are a good team, David. Yes.
We are a good team. Yeah, it's like being a
Yeah.
radio host.
Okay.
We could play some records as well, maybe. Okay, everybody's really welcome. Thanks for the
Yeah.
kind words coming in. We'll wrap it up there. Like I said, we'll be in touch with slides, YouTube link to the recording. I think we'll go with this recording because it's got the best questions. And
Yeah.
yeah, thanks
And please send
everybody.
feedback. Yeah.
Send feedback, and
Yeah, absolutely.
we'll
Yeah.
plan on just a generic webinar. We'll have a P5 installed. You can just ask lots of questions, and it might be quite an
Yeah, that's a
interesting,
good idea.
yeah, like a kind of homebrew session around data management. Cool. Okay. Well, thanks again,
Thank you,
everybody.
David.
Enjoy the rest of your
Yeah.
days wherever you are, and
Yeah.
we'll talk to you again soon.
Bye bye also from
Thanks.
my side.
Yeah, thanks, Joseph.
Bye.
Brilliant. Bye.
Bye, David.
Cheers.
Bye.